Thank you for joining us this evening. A regular scheduled council meeting of the Park City City Council on June 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lynn here.
Here.
George Glover.
Here.
Ben Sosetta.
Here.
Melvin Kerr.
Here.
Tom Jones.
Here.
George Capps.
Here.
Brandy Bailey.
Here.
Jim Schrader.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This evening, Pastor Nathaniel Thurman's going to lead in the invocation, and Ben's going to lead in pledge. If everybody please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for the blessing that you've poured upon the city. Thank you for the men and women that have led us this far. And I pray that you would lead and guide and give discernment to these men and women as they lead us to the future that you have for us. Thank you for the heart for the kids, and thank you for the heart for the next generation as they lead us to the future. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? Ben?
Yeah, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
And Jim?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. We don't have anything for awards or presentations this evening. We have one person signed up to speak at public forum, Harold Browser.
Hey, all the concerned parties know why I'm here, so I'll keep it short. I want to thank Mr. Jones and Mr. Kerr for reaching out to me a few weeks ago. I apologize for, I just replaced my cell phone, didn't have it set up properly, so I missed your phone calls and your voice messages. But Cindy and I would both like to know, or encourage you to reach out again. Let's set up that meeting and get a kind of an idea as to when that might happen.
I seen your email there. You available evenings and Saturdays.
I'm semi-retired, so I'm available constantly.
Oh, okay. What about Cindy? Is she?
Mostly in the evenings.
In the evenings, okay.
And I would imagine weekends would be good for her.
Okay. And we get your number, so we'll get with you.
That's all I need. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great day.
All right. That brings us to staff reports. Sean?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Good evening. During the last meeting, there was discussion about the BMX track, recent improvements just finishing up, whether council would allow a small number of RVs for their regional race, and how that was going to impact or coincide with a 60-team baseball tournament going on at the same time. I just wanted to report this evening that due to some great work from our Public Works Department, as well as the help and support of the property owner, the land just adjacent to the park, both events went off extremely well, and it appeared that all the parking was able to be accommodated and that there were no issues by allowing the RVs in the park. Other notable events this past week included the 12th Annual Fishing Derby, whereas even in a post-COVID environment, it was a great success with more than 160 participants, a very diverse crowd and very good day. And then finally, 81 Speedway had both a packed parking lot and a grandstand for their hornet cutting system night at the races this past weekend. So it was a very busy weekend for the whole entire community. Just a couple of quick updates on road projects. I know the council has expressed concerns about the timing of the traffic light at 61st and 135. Today on site, Sims Electric was up there steering the new cameras and working on the processor, so we expect that that'll be complete by the end of the week. And then finally, if you've been along Broadway within the last day, signs are finally going up for road construction to start on July 6th for Broadway and the 77th Street project. It's a reminder to the community that this will be going on for approximately 3.5 to 4 months until the middle of October, where that intersection will be closed down. Additionally, there will also be road improvements being made at the same time in front of the new distribution center on Broadway, and those two should start this next week. Those improvements include widening the road to accommodate both deceleration lanes on the east side of the road by the two entrances, as well as adding a center turn lane for their 3 southern entrances. So if you're heading southbound on Broadway, there's going to be a turn lane to allow the trucks and cars to turn into the facility. So That's it, sir.
All right, Ben?
Yeah, and you mentioned BMX and everything this weekend. I know it is just kind of short notice. Have you had a chance to hear from any of our hotels or businesses on how they thought things went?
We have a call out to them, but we haven't gotten the report back yet.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
All right. We don't have any further questions, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion? John?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as it's presented.
And Jim?
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to new business, item 7, which is a public hearing to consider the approval of ordinance leveling special assessments for the improvements at Echo Hills Commercial Second Phase 1, High Ridge Second Phase 4, High Ridge Second Phase 5, and Prairie Hills Phase 5. And I will open this public hearing at 7:06. And Larry?
Yeah, good evening. Larry Kleeman with Ransom Financial advisor to the city, helping with bond issues and project financing. If you were here last month, we talked about we're planning the process of permanently bond financing these various projects, as the mayor just mentioned there, High Ridge and Prairie Hills and Echoes Hills Commercial. The intent is for the debt service, the bonds, to be paid for by special assessments by the property owners that benefit from those projects, basically street, water, sewer. And so before we issue the bonds, state law requires us to go through a certain process. The first part started last month. We reviewed the final costs, and we sent out notices of proposed special assessments to each of the property owners, mailed those out, and they were alerted to the hearing that's going on right now, so they can come and express their opinion on those, which I'll sit down here in just a moment, and anybody who's here can express that. Then after that, then there will be a special assessment ordinance, which officially levies the special assessments. They have until the end of July, I think it is. They can prepay their special assessments. Typically, nobody does that, and then it'll just go on to the property taxes at the end of the year for the life of the bonds for 15 years. Otherwise, I'll sit back and see if anybody else wants to speak.
All right. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on this? Anybody from the council have any questions? John?
I had a citizen from in High Ridge was asking me about, there's some specials that many of them were unaware of that is now being assessed to them, and I guess I just want to speak on that. I thought she was going to be here tonight, but just in case she's watching on TV or whatever, if we could get some explanation of.
Yeah, I've had a few phone calls from people who had special assessment notices that they weren't expecting. There's a pretty stringent process in law how these are all levied, and whenever a project starts at the city, typically it's when a developer comes to the city, says, hey, I want street, water, sewer in, special assessed. The moment the city agrees to that, they adopt an advisability resolution, and that's filed with the registered deeds. So all property owners should be aware, if they do a title search, of not only existing specials, but potential future specials. About 15 years ago, there was a law that was passed that actually tells sellers of lots that they're supposed to notify purchasers of any specials that may be coming down the pike. And typically that's done, oftentimes a realtor will call city and say, hey, what are the outstanding specials and such. That's the usual process. But again, as I mentioned, it's part of the title work. It's filed with the registered deeds, so everybody should be on notice that specials are out there. Sometimes there's numerous specials. I think some of these properties, especially in High Ridge, they already had a few specials for what are probably called arterial roads and main water lines. Not the projects we're dealing with tonight. Tonight we're dealing with actual streets right in front of the house and water lines going directly to the house. So there are several layers of specials out there. Some have already been levied. Tonight's are new specials, which people hopefully have been put on notice of.
Thank you.
Okay. George?
I was just curious what the improvements in Echo Hills were.
This would be some of that infrastructure that was put in place, and then it's delayed for, 2 years?
Year and a half to 2 years.
So this would be like Atwood's that property would now start picking up that special assessments.
Okay, I was just curious.
Tom?
I was going to say, if there aren't any more questions, I'll move to approve
Can you hang on
ordinance
just-
1122-20.
Can you hang on a second?
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Does anybody else from the public wish to speak on this? Not seeing anyone, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:10 PM. And then Tom?
I would move that we approve ordinance 1122-2021, levying special assessments on certain property to pay the cost of internal improvements in the city of Park City, and is therefore authorized and provided in the collection of such special assessments.
And Jim?
I'd second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Marla, would you call the roll?
John Linear.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that ordinance passes 8-0. Thank you very much, Larry. That brings us to item 8, which is discuss and consider appointments to the Community Relations Board. Everybody has that information. Everybody knows Sherry's been actively involved, and I'd recommend that we make these appointments. Brandy?
I make a motion to approve the appointments of Dalton Reynolds Black and Sherry Busenitz as members of the Community Relations Boards with a term expiring in 2023.
George?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. That brings us to item 9, which is discuss and consider approving the purchase of 2 replacement police vehicles and related vehicle equipment. Chief?
Mr. Mayor, council members, this evening, I'd like to request your permission to purchase 2 vehicles to replace 2 that have exceeded the age and the mileage that were set for the vehicle replacement plan. We obtained quotes for 2 Ford F-150 2021 year model police responder pickups. We currently have 2 of these vehicles, and they've proven to be very good for use as a police vehicle. We obtained bids for these from Shawnee Mission Ford and from Rusty Eck Ford. The one from Rusty Eck Ford was under the REAP, or Regional Area Economic, there we go, partnership. Thank you, sir. With their contract, and then the one with Shawnee Mission Ford was the MACPP, that's the Mid-America Council of Public Procurement, which is a procurement plan that's used up in the Kansas City area, part of Kansas City and part of Missouri also. These were the lowest prices that were available from both vendors. Rusty Eck Ford was a little bit higher in this case. The quote that's in front of you, or the summary sheet rather, has the quotes for the vehicles and also for the related equipment. I made a few notes regarding some of those issues. The first 2 were on the purchasing cooperatives that we got bids from. Secondly, the deadline to order 2021 year model Ford pickups is going to be on the 25th, June 25th this week. The aftermarket installed equipment, we use Superior Emergency Response Vehicles in Andover. There's only a couple of vendors that do that kind of work in the Wichita area, and we've had very good luck with them. If we switch to a different vendor, we've gotten quotes from them in the past, which have always been higher, and that would mix our equipment if we were to do that. The video systems, you'll notice that there are 2 in-car video systems. We just purchased, as you may remember, all new video equipment. The reason that we didn't purchase the equipment for these 2 vehicles, one of them was going to be, the vehicle was going to be traded out, so it didn't make sense at that time to buy brand new equipment and put it into a vehicle that was just a few months later going to be sold. The other one is essentially being created by expanding the size of our fleet by 1. I say that because we're keeping 1 vehicle that we might otherwise move off to towards being sold. That is because of the addition of the detective position. We need to dedicate a vehicle that's available for that detective to use. Glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Ben?
Chief, I appreciate you taking the time on this here to the quotes. Other than the $400 difference per vehicle, is there a reason to take Shawnee Mission over a local company?
Shawnee Mission Ford is, they've been very good to deal with. In the past, we've had situations where, for instance, we have the deadline of June 25 to order. I think 2 or 3 times in the past, we've actually been past that deadline by the time I came to the council. And they have actually ordered a vehicle for us with no commitment on our part. We tell them, it's up to the council, and they just know they can sell it if they order it. They've done that for us in the past. But, of course, that's with no expectation that we'll go back to them in the future. So other than the $400 and the relationship that exists there, no.
Okay. I'm just thinking through here as far as, I get $800, and I guess in a good relationship, those also always good to have in those terms. Just thinking though, as far as terms of buying local, obviously give us a little bit of a incentive here. So I just wanted to ask that there.
I have a note from our finance director. Should be paid out of the capital equipment fund, not the PD general fund. Thank you.
All right, Tom?
Well, I was just going to say, so you're buying these through Mid-America Council then?
Yes,
in
that's
Kansas
correct.
City?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got sold, and I'm part of REAP, I'm in that mess, and we were told by Ford that we couldn't beat the price that REAP's got. And so I'm struggling with why other agencies are beating us on that. It's supposed to 501(c) discount that you have to be a nonprofit to get it, so REAP became a nonprofit, and I just need some feedback, and I don't know if it's the base car price or if it's the package that's cheaper. So,
Sir, I don't know other than this is the second, the 2 Ford Explorers, or the one that we bought this last time. We got a quote under the REAP contract, and that was about $3,300 more than the state contract.
but was that a drive-away car with equipment and everything on it, or was that a bare car?
No, it had a few things above the base, but not many.
But it
was
didn't have-
ordered. It had to be ordered, in other words.
But it didn't have the police equipment on it?
It did, yes. Well, not the, I'm sorry, not the lights and so forth. Is that what you mean?
Okay. Because I'm going to take this back and try to understand why they're selling this as the best thing and we're not getting it. So, I'd like to understand that, so.
I understand. That's the second time now we've quoted it, just to kind of, check and make sure that that wasn't a one-off, and
Okay.
I don't really have an explanation for that.
Okay. I mean, I've been to Mark before and stuff, and they're quite a place, so, it's hard to beat. So, anyway, I just had questions. I'm struggling with what the local dealers are telling us versus what's happening. So, okay, thank you.
Understand.
Okay. Anyone else?
I got a question. Do you have to go up to Kansas City and pick these up, or is that delivered down here?
In this case, sir, I think that we are going to have to pick it up. In the past, they've done it for us. I know they've done it for free a couple times. It's another service they provided. This time, I think they quoted us $200 to pick it up. I don't notice anything that's in the bid for that, though, so it wouldn't be something that we'd be paying on top of the bid, or else it would have been quoted that way.
So we're actually $200 difference now, or per unit?
I guess to clarify that, if there was a charge for us to go pick it up, then it would have been in the quote. So I'm assuming there's no charge in this case, otherwise it would have been quoted.
So they're going to deliver for that price?
Yes.
Okay.
Brandy?
With the delay in cars being delivered, do you have an approximate delivery date?
Man, that's a good question, but it seems like on police vehicles, it hasn't been as bad as non-police vehicles. I don't know why that is, but I know there's a delay with chips in particular being in short supply, and just new vehicles, period, has been a long delay. But they haven't given us a real firm date, but it wasn't that far out. It was the same for the Explorer that we ordered earlier. I think it was maybe 3 months, roughly.
Okay, anyone else? Jim?
Okay, I don't have any more questions, so I would go ahead and move to approve $112,019.92 for two 2021 Ford F-150 police responder pickup trucks from Shawnee Mission Ford, and the related equipment and installation is quoted to be paid out of the Capital Improvement Fund? Is that
Capital
correct?
Equipment Fund.
Capital
Yes, sir.
Equipment Fund. Thank you.
Brandy?
I second the motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you,
Thank you,
Chief.
Mr. Mayor.
That brings us to item 10, which is consider a charter ordinance number C-42-2021, amending charter ordinance number 32, expanding the persons who can serve as members of the library board. Doug?
Mayor and Council, at present, our charter ordinance number 32, which was adopted several years ago, and at that time we chartered out from the state statute in order to allow library board members to serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Under the state statute, there's a limit to 2 consecutive terms. You have to get off the board and then take a break and come back, and we were having real difficulty in getting people to serve on the board, and so that was the purpose of Charter Ordinance 32. At present, in addition to the 7 members of the board that are appointed, the mayor serves ex officio as a member of the library board. What that means is whoever's in the mayor's seat is that person, and that person only is a member of the library board. What Charter Ordinance 42 does is to charter out from that specific provision of the state statute, KSA 12-1222, to now allow the additional person on the library board to be the mayor or his or her designee. That's it.
And this would be at my request.
Oh, yes.
I appreciate that, Doug. But this is one area where I think there needs to be a little bit more flexibility in. Usually within the other boards and liaison, we tend to mix that up a little bit, and the library board is one of those that I think probably could get pulled away from the mayor so that it could free that spot up for somebody else to serve on that, and maybe put in some type of rotation plan. So, Ben?
Yeah, this seems pretty simple and straightforward, so I'd make a motion to approve Charter Ordinance C-42-2021, the Charter Ordinance amending Charter Ordinance number 32, exempting the City of Park City, Kansas from certain provisions of KSA 12-1222 as they relate to the membership of the Library Board, and repealing the original of said Charter Ordinance number 32.
John?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lanier.
Aye.
George Glover.
Aye.
Ben Salcetta.
Aye.
Melvin Kerr.
Aye.
Ray Mann.
Aye.
Tom Jones.
Aye.
George Capps.
Aye.
Brandy Bailey.
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that charter ordinance passes 9-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 11, which is consider ordinance amending sections 3-214 and 3-304 of the municipal code relating to CMB and alcohol liquor Sunday retail sale hours. Doug?
Mayor and Council, as it says in the staff summary, in the 2021 legislative session, there was a statutory change in Sunday retail sale of liquor and cereal malt beverage hours. As they existed prior to the legislation, those spirits and cereal malt beverage could only be sold on Sundays between the hours of 12 to 8 p.m. The legislature changed that and expanded those hours from 9 to 8 p.m. Cities can have hours that are more restrictive than what the state allows. We couldn't open up at 7 o'clock in the morning because they've set this now at 9, but there's nothing that says we have to change our hours when they make those legislative changes. But this is in front of you today in ordinance form, amending sections 3-214 and 3-304 to expand Sunday sales at retail. That means liquor stores or packaged CMB from, instead of 12 to noon to 8 p.m., 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday sales are permitted at retail in our city, and the state permits Sunday sales at retail of alcoholic liquor and CMB on any Sunday except for Easter Sunday, and that has not changed with this ordinance change.
Thank you, Doug. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Brandy?
I move to approve ordinance 1123-2021, an ordinance amending sections 3-214 and 3-304 of the municipal code of the city of Park City, Kansas, pertaining to the hours that cereal, malt beverage, and alcoholic liquor may be sold at retail on Sunday, and repealing the originals of said sections 3-214 and 3-304.
And Tom?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any discussion. Marlo, would you call the roll?
John Lynn
Aye.
George Glover,
Aye.
Ben Salcetta,
No.
Melvin Kerr,
Nay.
Tom Jones,
Aye.
George Capps,
Aye.
Brandy Bailey,
Aye.
Jim Schrader.
Aye.
And that ordinance passes 6-2. Thank you, Marlo. That brings us to item 12, which is consider an ordinance amending Article 6, Section 100 of the zoning regulations relating to the storage and short-term occupancy of RVs. Doug?
Mayor and Council, this matter is back in front of you for, I think, the third time, but the second time to really discuss specifics of storage of RVs in our city and whether or not to permit short-term occupancy, and if so, under what conditions. Because this is an ordinance that amends the zoning regulations, after your last meeting where you discussed this at some length and heard from the public, this was noticed up and presented to the Planning Commission. And on June 7th, the Planning Commission met in a special session and considered some of the things that you talked about and heard from members of the public. And it was a rather lengthy discussion, and I'm going to hope that you can remember some of the things that we talked about from the last time that it was in front of you. And so I'll highlight what the Planning Commission suggested. Now let me say, this looks a little bit like a zoning case because it goes to the Planning Commission, comes to you, but it doesn't ping pong like zoning cases do. We've satisfied the state statute with the notice of a hearing in front of the Planning Commission. They've had their public hearing, and they're making their recommendations to the governing body. You are free at this point with majority vote. There is no supermajority, and there's no worrying about overturning what the Planning Commission has suggested they would like to see. So it's back in front of you for a final decision. But I do want, and I pointed out in the staff summary, I want you to know what the Planning Commission, who spent, again, a good bit of time and put a lot of effort into thinking about things, the sort of things that they wanted to focus on and suggest. If you will recall, when we started talking about this, back before the Planning Commission, storage of RVs was to be behind the front yard setback, but there were no limitations on how close to property lines they could be stored. When you considered this, you had some concerns about that, and there was a lengthy discussion about making the storage of RVs not only be behind the front yard setback line, but some distance off property lines between adjacent properties. The Planning Commission, after back and forth discussion and some disagreement, finally took a vote that they believed that that was problematic because of the way certain neighborhoods in our city are set out, and that it would be just restrictive. It wasn't that they didn't care about protecting people next door, maybe from an RV being there, but how much would 5 feet or 7 feet or 10 feet that it's farther away improve not having to look at it, or the height of it, so that whatever you could see when you looked out into the distance. And they finally concluded that it should be no such restriction, that if you have it properly surfaced, you can store your RV behind the front yard setback, essentially right next to the fence. That's number one in the suggestions that I've set out in the staff summary. The second thing that took some time and some discussion was the general definition of recreational vehicles. I've set it out in the staff summary. I'll just leave it at that. I don't have any great argument with that. There were people that knew more about RVs and slide-in campers and what you could do and whether you could stand in one and how tall they are and all those sorts of things. And so their suggestion is as it's set out there. Again, if you have any desire to change any of that, that can certainly be done. And then number three, they certainly accepted temporary occupancy. They liked the idea of a permit, realized the necessity of a permit as far as enforceability goes for code enforcement and the police department. They believed that 2 a year with a limit of one day to 15 consecutive days for each permit was appropriate. They wished to have a daily fee to reflect that if you did 15-day one, maybe you paid $3 a day, $45. If you only did it for 2 days, you paid $6. Sort of reflecting what they perceived might be the level of effort that the city would have to put forth administratively to put that out, and then for the code enforcement people to kind of check on it. And finally, what they really, really wanted was, I think, a way to address some of the concerns that the council had last time about unusual circumstances, not just somebody that had somebody come in to visit that wanted to stay for a little while so they could stay in the driveway or close, but somebody who had some incident, fire in the house, some remodeling where they have an RV and it was convenient for them and it served an emergency purpose. So their suggestion was to allow a third permit at the discretion of the governing body. I normally discourage those sorts of things when we talk about drafting ordinances because I'm not sure that's the best way for you to spend your time on Tuesdays, but they did feel like that was something appropriate, and not sure there's any other really good way except that the governing body could adopt that as part of this zoning regulation and give that authority to the administrator or staff. So again, those are the suggestions that they have made. That is all set out in the new subsection 5 in the handout of the zoning regs that I've given to you. Those things that I talked about, the Planning Commission wanting to have, that's the way number 5 is coming to you tonight. So if you wish to change any of that, you can let me know and we can do that and bring it back for formal adoption at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Doug. John?
I'm good. He answered my question.
Okay. Anybody else? Ben?
So my biggest, I think, concern would be probably in that number 3 section, as far as either charging for 1 day or up to 15 days or whatever. I mean, we're talking administrative cost. Are we looking at, are we considering the time code enforcement has to go by to check and see? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about the time that it would take just to fill out or receipt the application for a permit? I mean.
I'm only the messenger. I can't tell you what was in
Yeah,
there.
but I mean, I guess this is just my.
Yeah. I can't tell you what was in their minds. They believed you wanted 15 days, you should pay more. I didn't argue and say pretty minimal effort to issue a permit. Again, I think that's administratively a little bit more effort from the police department and code enforcement, but I'm not sure it's any different for a 4-day permit than it is for a 15-day permit.
Well, yeah, and the question is, I mean, so they're wanting, I mean, initially my thought was, okay, you know what, I'm going to come to the city, get a permit for up to 15 days to stay in my RV. So I just come here, you say, market 6/23 tomorrow. And so I have 15 days from that date. Now it sounded like they're wanting us to, or wanting someone to come and say, okay, I'm coming in 6/23, I'm going to stay for 3 days, so approve my permit for 3 days, even though I'm allowed up to 15. If I decide I want to do a 4th day because I'm still covered under the 15 days, do I have to come back and ask for an extra day and pay more for that extra day? I mean,
no, I mean, this is their recommendation.
Sure, yeah.
And once again, they're not here that we can ask them their kind of thought process, but, I mean, I don't necessarily
so I guess
agree with that. I think it should be some modest, minimal fee.
Sure. I mean, if we do like a $5 flat fee or something like that.
Exactly.
I'm fine with that. Okay.
And that's where
Perfect.
I think it should be.
I'm all good now.
$5, and that's it for whatever.
Perfect.
Anybody else? Come on, we had a lot of discussion about this. I want to thank the Planning Commission for getting together and talked us through, and as Doug said, they did have good dialogue. They did get to hear from people. They came back with some recommendations that they just wanted us to think of. I think their idea of kicking the length out was a good idea. It's very reasonable with kind of what they said and pointed out, and when you look at the width of some driveways in between the houses and stuff, I mean, it makes perfect sense. My biggest thing would be the fee thing. I just think it needs to be something simple, $5-6, because the whole point is just that we have a method of tracking it. And I don't think we need to try to make money, or if somebody wants to save 15 days, I mean, that shouldn't cost anything more. John?
I agree with you. I mean, you can tell the Planning Commission, they really deliberated well and came up with some good recommendations, and obviously we can take some of them and not take some of them, but I guess just in the effort of moving this along, do we want to just, like, number one, does anybody disagree with number one? Number two, does anybody disagree? Just kind of go down the line and see if anyone wants to tweak what we got, because I think we've got a great starting point. They really gave us a good foundation here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I would just kind of echo what Ben said, that you just do a $5 fee. It doesn't matter, permit. I do think that probably the council should delegate that authority to the city administrator or somebody else in staff. I don't think that needs to be a council decision. If somebody had a fire in their house on a Wednesday night after our council meeting, to have to turn around or have a special meeting to do this, I mean, that's the whole point of an emergency, is how do we take care of something quickly? Jim?
I was just actually going to say what you just said, was to bring up that deal about the third permit. That doesn't need to come back to the city council, and either we don't have it in there or we delegate it to the city administrator or someone else. I'm fine with that. I'm also fine with, well, really everything else they have here, including the change to a flat fee. That seems to make sense. Keep it simple and give us the ability to track it. So I'm good with everything else.
So just real quick before coming back to you, just If we were to delegate that authority, do you have a recommendation? Should that be the administrator, or do you think that should be maybe somebody over code enforcement?
The chief?
I have no problems with the administrator.
Okay,
Because
I just want to ask.
more than likely, sir, we're going to sit there and talk about it as a staff. I'm going to get with the chief, I'm going to get with code enforcement and say, hey, look, here's the situation. I'm going to get together with the attorney. So,
Okay. John?
I'm going to make a motion to direct the city attorney to draft a final ordinance reflecting the city council's approved amendments. Those being, number 1, as it's written, number 2, as it's written, number 3, as it's written with the exception of the city administrator or his designee being able to have the authority to issue the permit. And
Then delete the word daily from the fee.
correct.
And do you want to assign a fee to that?
Yes, and on the fee would,
Sorry.
That's
wanna
okay,
judge-
but then if we want to change it, we have to start back with the planning commission again to change it to $10. So the way it reads right now is just a fee established by the city,
Okay,
and,
okay.
I'll leave that part out.
yeah.
So take off the daily.
Yeah, lose the word daily, just be a fee, and the way it reads right now, it would say, a fee established from time to time by the city, which gives a notice to everybody that it certainly could change.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't require zoning kind of changes in the zoning code, it's just a public, it's like court costs that the judge publishes.
Yes, and then on that second to the last line, the city council have the authority would be scratched from city council to city administrator or his designee.
I'll bring it back next meeting.
Okay, is there a second? Ben?
Second, I just have one quick question, so for discussion. This is not dealing with the time period, that's the separate portion as far as the time period that the RV can be in the front area. Is that, this ordinance covering that time as well, that 48-hour period?
That's a good question. That's an easier one for us. I can bring that back, too. That was a parking ordinance,
Okay.
Councilman, and
Okay.
we might as well bring that back and
I just wanted to
I
make
think
sure it wasn't
I
this
think
one.
I had how people felt about that, and I'll bring that back, and then that could be tweaked also. But
Okay.
that's a good.
And
good
I just wanted to
point.
make sure I wasn't missing it in the reading
No,
through it.
it's a good point.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Planning Commission. That brings us to item 13, which is discuss and consider scheduling a workshop regarding the public works staffing and fee structure. Sean?
yes, sir, that just leads us into the fee structure. This way, when we propose a workshop at the next meeting, July 13th, we're proposing a workshop, 6 o'clock p.m. prior to our regular council meeting to talk about public works staffing, as well as bring before council a summary of the current fee structure.
So, Ben?
Yeah, I want to say thank you for getting this put together and on our radar. I'm a big proponent, and as we mentioned last week in the budget time, and moving on to the item that's here to follow, I think it's a good thing that we make sure we're investing heavily and properly in our Public Works Department, because we're going to hopefully be increasing their workload and making sure they have everything that they need to be successful. So I'd make a motion to approve scheduling a special workshop on July 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. to discuss public work staffing and fee structure.
Okay. Is there a second? Jim?
I want to second that just for discussion, though.
Okay.
Question on July 13th, I believe that's Depositions Day. Are we filling that day up too much?
Yes, we don't have a firm schedule of who's to be deposed on the 12th or the 13th and what time periods of the day. That's a good point. That's, I think, going to happen that day, though, for almost certainty.
Okay. How does it affect our timing on this if we move this up or back? Or is it an issue to anyone else?
We haven't seen the schedule, so I don't know when mine is either. I don't know. Doug, have you seen anything tentatively yet?
No, I did sent a note to our attorney, and he said that the opposing attorney had not gotten with him on the schedule. I can tell you this, if you had concerns, there are no hard and fast rules. There's no judge in the room when there's a deposition. If it gets to be 4:30 and 4:45 and a lawyer thinks he can be done in a half an hour, or she, most people are going to say, okay, let's get it over with. But if there's another couple hours of questions for some reason and it's getting to be 5 o'clock, it's time to go home. So to answer that, if that was your question, Jim, it's not going to go long enough, and I didn't pay attention to the time. Was it 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Yeah, I think 6 is pretty safe. I don't think anybody's going to be sitting in a deposition much past 5 o'clock on the 13th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. I'd ask for a 5-minute recess. Ben?
So moved.
And John?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. We'll say it's All right, we are back from our recess, finishing up with governing body reports, and we'll start with Jen.
I don't have any comments tonight.
Brandy?
So this Saturday is the Miss 4th of July pageant. If you haven't signed up, you can go out to the city's Facebook page. There's a link so you can sign up for that. It'll be at the Best Western from 2 to 4. Also, Sherry Buznitz, we were talking about parade, and she asked if the council was going to do a float. So I just want to throw it out there. Is there any interest from the council to do a float for the parade on July 4th? If you're interested, let me know, and I'll get with Sherry and tell her yes or no.
Okay, George?
Well, that brings up an interesting question. What is the game plan for the 4th? I haven't heard anything.
Yep, I haven't heard anything either.
I don't think, we have another, do we have another meeting between now and then?
No.
Okay, well, that's kind of unusual.
We are where we are every year.
It's always in the last final minutes.
Well, another thing, some things take you back a while, and I was watching the chief up there explaining the cost of those vehicles, and I remember how much flack I caught for spending $24,000 for that Tahoe many years ago. It just brought me back, and it's something how the prices have went up. They have really skyrocketed.
I don't know, George, I think you're best known for when you were told to cut the budget and you eliminated the gas out of the budget and solved the problem, and then nobody seemed to like that. That's my favorite story.
Yeah.
Tom?
It goes deeper than that. They used to trade uniforms too, so instead of buying new ones. I don't have anything.
Melvin?
All I have is, I was really impressed with the BMX, how that went off. Ben sustained some burns when he was trying to cook hamburgers out there, but I mean, other than that, it went off pretty smooth. And the baseball tournament and everything, fishing derby. Really nice to see everybody in the city there, so that's all I have.
Okay, Ben?
The burns were minor. But no, appreciated just all the work over the weekend, whether it was the fishing derby. Thank you to both George Glover and Brandy for the work put in over there, as well as Simon, the Public Works Department there. The BMX event was phenomenal. They were out there packed at early Saturday morning. Spent some time talking with Jamie. Nothing but praise from all the vendors that were there and the riders that were there. Talked to several people, and they were just ecstatic about how well our BMX track looks compared to what it was like several years ago. Appreciated the city's support in this, and again, always, like any group, asking for more support, but they were very thankful for what was done out there. So just appreciate all the work that Jamie did there on that. And then I've had a resident reach out to me a couple times, and so I wanted to kind of get some, or throwing out there concerning sidewalks that run along. They're not existing right now, but a sidewalk that would take maybe from the village estates, and I always forget the one on the east there, but some sidewalk connectivity from these southern housing additions that would maybe connect towards the north, towards hydraulic, and ultimately, obviously, as we move forward with our downtown portion, would be a good connection place for them. Right now, there's nothing that goes south of the old City Hall building along there, and for those residents in the south side of the horseshoe, or in those areas north, I think that would be great. So I'd like to see us see what we could do to maybe look about addressing that issue of getting some sort of sidewalk plan in place to maybe work that moving forward with our next year budget. The last thing I had is actually just a question concerning our downtown. And I know that if I remember right, so this is just more of might be a refresher, Confluence was going to work towards establishing the next few steps to move forward since we've approved that design plan. And we're still waiting on kind of that portion. Is that correct?
The next couple steps is taking the plan that Confluence has provided and drafting up a request for proposal to submit that out to eligible developers to solicit inputs from them.
Thank you. I got several requests on that too, so I appreciate that.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I'd like to say, you know, I remember the BMX track years ago when Melvin and I went out there and the grass was 4 foot high, and where it was then and where it's come now it's a full circle. So I appreciate the fact, the hard work that's gone into the BMX track. Also the purchase of the land and doing some of the things that we want to do in Park City as far as events, having the extra parking, not being so constricted. Our Park City Fishing Derby, I thought it went great. Had over 100 kids there. I want to thank the local businesses, the sponsors, the volunteers. Without the volunteers, that event would not go on, and this was our 12th year. Also, this was our longest fish in the 12 years that I've been doing this was caught. It was a 30-inch flathead catfish, so kudos to the little boy who caught that fish. So that's all I have.
All right, John?
No, I have nothing. I'll just say happy 4th of July to everybody.
All right. Anybody else?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
And Jim?
I'd second that.
All right. Got a motion and a second. Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion passes 8-0. Thank you and good evening.